Hello and welcome to the AIM webinar series on AIT-enabled tracking. I'm Mike Allen and I serve AIM as their member engagement manager. AIM is a global industry alliance which represents the interest of everyone using barcoding, RFID, and related data capture technologies, including manufacturers, software vendors, integrators, governments, and end users. AIM membership is about supporting standards, community, advocacy, and knowledge. Specifically, you'll receive early access to industry technical research and information. Your membership gives you the opportunity to influence the direction of our industry and actively participate in research. Belonging and participating with your peers will increase credibility for your products, services, and organization. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items I would like to go over. First is AIM's antitrust policy. It's the policy of AIM Inc. to conduct its operations in strict compliance with the antitrust laws. No AIM activity shall create even the appearance of a violation of the letter or spirit of the antitrust laws. Next is our collaboration and work product policy. AIM committee meetings are held for the primary purpose of advancements in our industry, which necessarily involves development of work product intended solely for the public domain. AIM's developed this policy for the protection of its members who engage in this important collaborative effort. As you probably noticed, you are muted. Please stay on mute throughout the presentation. If you do have questions for our speakers, Amanda or Mitch, you can send those via the chat option to AIM Member Services. We'll answer as many questions as possible after the presentation. I mentioned their names a moment ago, but let me further introduce today's speakers, Amanda Highness and Mitchell Jones. Amanda is a Senior Project Manager for Integrated ID Solutions. In this role, Amanda leverages over 10 years of supply chain information technology experience to partner with clients to leverage AIT solutions for maximum results. Mitchell is Director of Sales and Business Development for IndySoft Corporation. Mitchell, a 10-year stable at IndySoft, began as a senior trainer and implementation consultant before graduating to his current role. Without further ado, Amanda will be starting off by going over the agenda for today's webinar.
Thank you, Mike. Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda Highness, and I'm a Senior Project Manager for Integrated ID Solutions. IndySoft's Mitch Jones and I are excited to talk to you today about AIT-enabled tool tracking. First, we're going to start with an overview, and then we'll cover the importance of tool management and opportunities in tool management. Next, we're going to cover the features and benefits of tool management software, and then show how tool management software can be further enhanced with AIT. Finally, we'll dive into a case study, and we'll show how we partnered to design and implement AIT-enabled tool management, and we'll show the benefits that solution can deliver. The solutions you see today are a result of collaboration and partnership between Integrated ID Solutions, GlobeRanger Corporation, and IndySoft Corporation. Automatic identification technology is the ideal solution to reduce pain points and inefficiencies of tool calibration and asset management. We have designed and implemented multiple turnkey integrated solutions with our collaborative partners. Today, we're going to showcase how these solutions deliver benefits like reducing labor costs, increasing efficiency, delivering a higher level of compliance, and giving greater visibility and standardization for tool and asset tracking. We're also going to show that while these solutions have several components, we're going to show automated check-in and check-out, transition between work areas, and asset tracking. All these pieces do come together in the end so that the solution with AIT really is virtually invisible to the end user. So now I'm going to hand it off to Mitch, and he's going to go over why tool management is important and showcase some of the features of tool management solutions.
Perfect. Thank you, Amanda, and thank you everyone for joining. So when we think about tool management is going to pertain to lots of things in our manufacturing arenas. It can be hand tools, consumable tools, tools left out on the production floor, tools that require maintenance, repair, and even calibrated devices and tools that can impact quality, have findings, out of tolerances, etc. Okay, so tooling management, it really touches just about every facet of all of our operational environments. Okay, so why we believe that tool management is super important is one is because of increased cost. There's several reasons that cost can be driven up significantly if we're not managing our tools properly. Of course, we know that we can have production delays that could come in the form of not having a proper inventory, not having even the inventory on hand or being able to locate it. It could also be a situation where you have calibrated tools that need to be reworked and can't even be used in production due to failures and out of tolerances, etc. We have also seen situations where you have complete decreased tool utilization. Okay, so and really what we mean by that is also going to touch into the excess inventory there. And the common scenario that we see a lot is we may have something as simple as a torque wrench, and let's say it's a 1,000 foot-pound torque wrench, and if your operation, let's say, owns 20 of those, and you calibrate them, let's just assume twice a year. So now we're doing, 20 times 2, we're doing 40 calibrations a year. But let's assume that if you guys actually can track data and actually realize that you only actually had 6 torque wrenches of this particular size checked out at any given time, you're actually maintaining and consuming too much money and labor just to be ready, because so you're essentially you're keeping up with too much backup equipment in some situations, which just leads to increased costs. And then we also have and have come across scenarios, and we think tooling management is really important for you, because we see folks that because they're over calibrating, sometimes they're over ordering, they cannot locate instruments, or simply they just have bad data records, it leads to increased maintenance. So it could be a situation where you're doing excessive maintenance on an instrument based on not actually using it. So if a tool is sitting out there on the production floor and just sitting idle, we don't necessarily need to always do maintenance on that device, depending upon your regulations and standards, of course. And then the last 2 reasons why tool management is really, really important is it actually impacts the quality. In the aerospace world, you simply put, you can't have, FOD out there on your production lines. So we don't want to be in a scenario where, inventory is actually checked out there in production, hasn't been turned back in, and then we have a shift change. That can lead to serious quality issues. And then furthermore, for calibrated devices that are maintained and have, routine ongoing schedules for service, the last thing we want to do is get ourselves into a compliance situation where we don't have data to present to our auditors. Okay, so we do believe there's some serious opportunities to where a proper tool management software and an AIT solution can really benefit folks. So some of the opportunities that we see in tool management is a lot of times, and just about every customer that I think most of us have worked with, or we've probably all been there before, is we have a very manual process. Okay, so we have situations where it's truly a manual check-in, check-out log, maybe an Excel file at best. So just the manual process is very labor intensive, very time consuming, very expensive. And that's if your employees and operators will keep up with those logs manually. So in addition to that, if we do have manual tools that we're tracking these check-in and check-out activities, it's also going to be challenging to search for data and actually get good and coherent information out of your systems. So, let's say we want to go and try to track down how many tools John Doe checked out last quarter. Well, if we're not filling out this logbook properly, that's going to be really hard. And even if it was filled out properly, manually scrolling through logbooks can be quite challenging. So we believe that having a proper software can really help you with just getting good data out of your tool management processes. Furthermore, software can actually help you with the validation of your tool status. So what we mean by that is there are certainly scenarios where certain tools shouldn't be issued to certain personnel due to training records, potentially due to the compliance of the device itself or the tool itself. So we have a scenario where a tool is, let's say, out of tolerance or on a product recall for that particular tool type, then we can actually have validation requirements built into a system to actually say, no, you shouldn't be checking this out. This tool was under review because of a bad part by an OEM or a vendor. So adding in validation is a huge opportunity to improve your tool management processes. Furthermore, we also believe that eliminating the manual reporting concept. We simply don't want end users or employees having to scroll through Excel files or rely on the old Control F and Control Find tools that the Microsoft products provide you. We believe it's better to actually have an automated system for reporting, and also an automated system to track how many tools are assigned to a certain location, how many are out of tolerance, how many are coming up for shortages on inventory, et cetera, et cetera. So eliminating manual reporting is a huge opportunity in tooling management. We kind of talked about the manual check-in, check-out process, right? That's, whenever we rely on manual processes, there's simply put are going to be disparities. There's going to be errors. There's going to be typos. There's going to be situations where tool number 1000 got transposed or written down as tool number 100. So that's certainly challenging to keep up with your data properly. And then really on top of that, that process will never really account for the fact that we check out a tool to John Doe, and then while John Doe's out there on the shop floor, he hands it over to Jane Doe, right? So now we're in a situation where the ownership is transferred potentially to a new location, a new owner of that device or that piece of tooling, and the software doesn't know. We have no way to keep visibility of that. So that's a major improvement area and opportunity we see in utilizing the AIT solution. Furthermore, we encourage let's put visibility in front of your operators. Let's give them real-time data access to these tools. If I'm checking out a tool and I know that it was used, let's say on 10 different product lines in the last month, and every 12 times we use it, we have to actually service it or calibrate it, I may elect to not even take that instrument out of the tool crib. So we want to provide that visibility to operators in a clean, easy way to navigate the system. And then there's really two other key things that we see that are poorly mismanaged in a lot of tooling operations, which is significant or lengthy replenishment times. So a lot of times it takes time to simply get inventory replenished. So if you don't have a proper database or application to give you what those lead times are, give you alternate vendors with even data on what their turn times are, we believe that's a serious opportunity that can be improved upon. And in addition to that, a lot of your tooling actually gets reworked, remanufactured, retooled by outside vendors. So by having a software that can engage and interact with your vendors throughout that process and give you real-time visibility is a major opportunity that we see in tooling management. And if you'll navigate over to the next slide, please. Okay, so a little bit about the tooling management software that our solution that we believe will help out, and really not just ours, but in any system that we believe you should be looking at is, you do want to have a system that gives you, what we're going to call end-to-end tool management. That's real-time visibility on the current status of every single piece of equipment or machinery, calibrated devices, all of your tooling. We want to give you real-time access of the current status. Is it checked in? Is it out of tolerance? Is it on a extended schedule? We also want to give you access to the location of it, who the owner is. Furthermore, beyond that, obviously, if it's in compliance or not as well. Okay. So we're also, with your tooling management software, a concept that we call equipment templates, or really just data integrity, is really, really important. So one of the things that the tooling management software that we're showcasing here has is a concept called templates. And if we go into, let's just say you have an Excel file to manage your locations and your inventories, not that any employee would ever do this on purpose, but one employee may describe as simple as a micrometer in the description field include the manufacturer. So we may have Mitutoyo micrometer, but another employee may say Mitutoyo in the description field, in the manufacturer field, and then outside caliper, outside, OD mic outside in the description column. So what that bad data is going to do is, if we try to run reports and forecast what our inventory levels need to be, and we don't have proper control or hierarchical data, we're going to have bad results. So keeping the integrity of your data is very, very important. In a good system, we also encourage you to be able to track not just your hand tools and consumable tools. Those are things that we don't necessarily uniquely identify, but we may put a tag on it to track it. So when it goes in and out of a tool crib, we know our inventory counts. But we also think you should be able to track uniquely identified devices. That's your pieces of machinery in the plant. That's your calibrated devices. That's also any consumables and spare parts inventory. And those are things that the tooling management software that we're showing here does provide. Now, in terms of your tools, we also think that it's important to be able to upload and put in diagrams, setups, drawings, list of where spare parts may be located on an asset. All of those things are going to help you better manage the tools that you have. Furthermore, it's also important to be able to store truly your documents associated with a given tool. Could be purchase records, calibration certificates, labels that have expiration dates on them. All those things will be stored in the software that your operators will have quick and ready access. And I know we touched on this one just a little bit earlier, which is like what I'm going to call is real-time logic-based alerts. So let's assume that we have a device that it failed calibration on its last cycle, and a particular user comes into the tool crib, and let's say it's under non-manned hours, and someone takes out a piece of equipment, and an RFID sensor sets it off and says, hey, no, this thing is past due, you shouldn't take that one. So what we believe is important is having the capability to have logic-based alerts. So again, in that scenario, it's an unmanned tool crib. So if someone walks in, attempts to walk out of the tool crib with a piece of equipment that failed calibration, we obviously want to set off some type of alert, whether that be audio, visual, email, text. We just want to do whatever we can to prevent that getting used in production and leading into a compliance scenario. So in addition to that, real-time out-of-tolerance, non-conformance, that could be on bad product, bad tools received, could also be on services, repairs, and calibration. So all of that's inclusive in the application that we're discussing here today. But those are key things that we think you should investigate and make sure that you have access to in your tooling management software. And then let's show the next slide for me, please. And then, just a little bit specific about the IndySoft application. Inside of here, this is the tooling management software that we're referring to. So this here is just a quick snapshot of the home page and the dashboard here. But if you look at this, one of the things the tooling management software provides that we're referring to, it's a workflow-based operation. An aerospace customer may have a completely different set of requirements and operations as opposed to a life sciences customer or an automotive customer. So we're going to allow you to customize and create workflow diagrams to actually give you real-time visibility into your operations. So if I want to know how many instruments are actually out with a vendor at calibration versus how many are in my repair shop versus how many are out for retool, we're going to give you that real-time transparency and very quick and easy tools to navigate and basically mold the product around your precise workflows. Okay. So what I'm going to do next is just pass it back over to Amanda, and she will discuss some of the AIT-enabled solutions.
Thank you, Mitch. AIT includes linear and 2D barcodes. 2D barcodes like QR codes and data matrix. It includes radio frequency identification like passive, semi-passive, or active RFID. And it can also include other integrated technologies, maybe telemetry or temperature-based sensors. So for example, if you're trying to capture additional vibration information from a tool, there are sensor-based solutions that can collect extra attributes such as that. So while there are a variety of technologies for AIT-enabled tool tracking, we found that using a combination of both the barcodes and the passive RFID provides a cost-effective and efficient means for most end users. It strikes that right balance between achieving the requirements of the tracking and traceability while striking that right balance with being cost-effective and scalable in terms of the infrastructure and that is needed. The other reason that you would want to use a mix of technologies is it gives that extra redundancy and flexibility. So for example, if you add on your tools a 2D data matrix, and then you also have a passive RFID tag, in case something happens to one of those tracking solutions, you always have the other to make sure that you can still locate and track that tool. There are a few challenges with implementing AIT for tool management. One of those challenges is that with using passive RFID in this scenario, tools are made of metal, and we're using these tools in highly metallic environments, like a manufacturing shop floor, for example. Metal can detune these passive RFID tags, and that affects the readability and the throughput and the data that you're getting. However, you can use RFID tags specifically designed for on-metal application, and this can really mitigate this challenge and allow for that extra flexibility. Another constraint of implementing AIT for tool management can be the small form factor of the tools themselves. So you can use a smaller passive RFID tag for smaller tools, but the smaller the tag, the closer the read range needs to be. So sometimes to meet this challenge, what we do is we associate a larger parent asset, such as a tool cabinet, a mobile cart, or a smart shelf, and we'll put a larger passive RFID tag on that larger asset, or sometimes we even put an active tag on that larger asset. So that way the readers can pick up these larger assets, even in the case when the tools themselves have the smaller passive tag. And that gives you that greater visibility to the individual tool locations. So overall, the benefits for AIT for tool management include unique identification, real-time information, reduced human intervention, and increased security. Tool management solutions, when enabled with AIT, really are enhanced and become even more efficient in accuracy with the tool management software. So the comprehensive AIT software provides both device management. It manages the fixed devices and the mobile infrastructure, but it also provides the process management. It turns the physical processes into logical processes. And so those logical processes do things like trigger exceptions, alerts, notifications, generate the real-time reports. So that comprehensive AIT software manages both the physical and the logical processes. So in the next part of the presentation, we're going to dive into how that customized integration between tool management software and the comprehensive AIT software enables 5 key areas. It enables the tag commissioning, the automated check-in and check-out, the transition management in and out of work areas, locating and tracking using mobile RFID and barcode, and enhanced automation of alerts and reports. So let's start with tool commissioning. Both new and existing tools can be AIT enabled. Existing tools can be imported into the AIT software, and then new tools can be created. The tool management software and the AIT software are going to be constantly synchronized in near real time. So it doesn't matter which system you initiated the tool commissioning, the systems are going to be staying in sync for every transaction. AIT truly allows check-in and check-out to become seamless. So imagine you're a user in a work area and you have tools that need to be serviced. The process starts when you take your tools to the service kiosk, and it starts with scanning your badge, as you can see on the screen here. You would place your tools on a smart shelf that's RFID enabled, or you would walk your larger tools through a portal. The service kiosk display screen is going to show information for you to visually confirm. It's going to show the tool serial numbers, the description, the tool quantity, to make sure that what you have is what the system has for you to be checked out. you're going to provide that visual confirmation, and then you would scan your badge to check out. Once you check out, there's going to be an automatic receipt posting with your user ID and the timestamp, and it updates the tool management and the AIT software automatically. So the impact and the benefits of this type of automation is very real, because this is an unmanned kiosk. Often checkout processes are manned operations. So you heard Mitch talk about, for example, those manual logbooks, and they require manual entry and tracking of tool information. Now, we found for one group of users that this process was so resource intensive that the kiosk was open for limited hours every shift, because the resources that were being used to man the service kiosks were also technicians responsible for servicing the tools. And so the process for operating the kiosk was too manual and too intensive for that kiosk to stay open for extended hours every shift. So those in the work area would have to wait until the service lab was open to bring their tools for service. So once this solution was implemented, this unmanned service kiosk could be open at all times, and those in the work areas would not have to wait to bring their tools in for service. Tools become much more available, and then this reduced a lot of time for both the technicians and for those in the cell. So transition management is about knowing where tools are within the facility and when they enter and leave the facility, both internally and externally. So this slide shows a location mapping feature, and you can see on this slide how there are RFID arrays at all the transition points. So you have RFID arrays at internal and external doors, and then you also have them at logical transition points. Let's say between the shipping area and maybe the start of another work area. So to the right, you see some examples of RFID portals that we would use. The top picture is what might be used on a fixed transition point, like a door. And then the bottom is an open air RFID portal array solution. And that's great where there's a logical transition point, but maybe not necessarily a fixed transition point. And then to the bottom of this map, you can see that you can see the tool information, location information, and the tracking information for that tool. Another application for transition management is they can also be configured for directionality. So one of the opportunities that was mentioned earlier was visibility to outside operations. So what can be useful is if users need to know if a tool has left a building. Let's say it left the building for vendor performed service. These portal arrays can be configured to detect directionality, and the AIT solution will tell you not just the tool's last known location, but it will also tell you whether it was leaving versus entering. So some locating and tracking tools also add great benefit. So these tools allow users to find the tools using a mobile RFID or a barcode scanner, or you can find and locate assets on your workstation. So to walk in the user's shoes, most often users start by searching the last known location of the tool, and they might do that search on their workstation or on a mobile device. Once they have the last known location, they'll go to that location, and then they can use the RFID scanner like a Geiger counter, and that gives an audible alert at increasing frequency as you're getting closer and closer to that exact location of the tool. Another locating and tracking tool that we have here is a smart shelf, and this can give you a visual location indicator. So for example, this smart shelf could be assigned to a certain work area, and at the start of the shift, all the tools assigned to that shelf and that area would be present on the shelf, and that LED indicator would display as green. As work continues and users are using the tools are going to be removed, and as you would expect, the LED indicator might turn to red. But at the end of the shift, to make sure, you could make sure that all the tools are back to the assigned shelf and the shelf is back to green for the beginning of the next shift. And this is really great application for when you want to make sure that tools are staying in the assigned area, but you don't want to go through the work and the disruption of having to lock tools and unlock tools throughout the day. So next we'll talk a little bit about alerts and reports and how AIT allows alerts and reports to be executed. So alerts and reports can truly be configured to your business rules. This slide just shows one example for one set of users. The report on the right here was sent to the owners of work areas every morning. And every morning it would show tools that were overdue, due today, or due within 30 days for that work area. So this not only made the service process more efficient, but it helped those owners of the work areas plan their work accordingly. So some other examples of reports are also here. You can have assigned tools by employee or type, tool status, tool inventory by employer location, and a lot of different reports specific for business rules. You can also have red lights and audible alerts for tools as an alert. So if tools are leaving an area unauthorized or authorized, you could have red lights and green lights and audible alerts trigger according to that as well. So all in all the process challenges that we introduced in the earlier slides can be remediated simply and effectively with the AIT-enabled solutions. So this slide shows all the benefits of automation and how every aspect of tool management can be transformed and made more efficient, accurate, and timely. So now we're going to get into the case study that demonstrates how these benefits come alive in a real world customer scenario. So in this case study, this gives a picture of just how powerful and yet seamless AIT-enabled tool management can be. So again, the process starts when the user learns that a tool requires service. So the user may learn that a tool needs service by receiving the SMS alert. They might have received the canned report, or in this case study, there are actually large display screens located throughout the facility that would show tools due or coming due or overdue for service. So then once the user learned that the tool needed service, they would bring it to the service lab kiosk. And from our check-in, check-out example from before, they would put the tools on the smart shelf if they were smaller, or they'd be walking the larger tools through the portal, and then that smart shelf with portals would automatically record the user ID, the tool serial numbers, and the timestamp. So again, this is what's replacing that manual logbook. Once that's done and they check out, the AIT solution would update the location and the status in the tool management software, which is being, and again, that tool management software and the AIT software are staying in sync. And then the reports and the monitors in the cell would also be updated. So now the tool that was brought for service is no longer in the active view for tools needing service, and that's automatically updated in that view. And then finally, alerts are going to be sent to a designated point of contact once the tool is serviced and ready for pickup. Here are some of the images from that case study. So you can see examples of the larger portals that were used in the lower right, and then you see the picture of the smart shelf as well. So overall, this case study was about driving quality, efficiency, and accuracy into tool management, but also making this as seamless and natural of a process as possible for all the end users. This slide reviews all the key performance indicators that were specific for that case study and that were measured in the previous example. So these KPIs included metrics like reducing total cost of ownership of tools, tool visibility, maintaining accurate tool maintenance data, maintaining accurate tool performance data, enhancing return on capital, and improving overall productivity and operational efficiency. So these benefits really touched multiple functions, and they benefit those responsible for the tool service, but also all the work areas. And this is just one example of how a client was measuring KPIs for tool management. Mitch, I know that you have more examples of the benefits of tool management. Could you share some?
Yeah, definitely. In the most recent implementation that we did with both of our products is the key thing that we saw that really helped this particular customer was the ability just to simply locate tools. You know, they had a major issue, particularly when they're calibrated devices, where they would get passed around, stuffed in desk drawers, because they weren't really checked out to individual employees. They're sort of checked out to a generic location. So by putting the RFID tags on there and implementing a passive system, the calibration stewards and folks running the calibration lab would be able to go into the system and isolate and find the last known location. So it saved them just tons of amounts of time just simply finding tools. There were also situations when tools actually left the building, whether it was scrapped and no one told the database or told the tool rooms. That's probably what happened 9 out of 10 times is what we found. But at least the data was there, and they were able to go and rectify that and get more tools ordered. So simply put, just knowing where things were in the building and knowing if items left the building was a huge gain on efficiency for them. And really, honestly, the largest time save was just visibility of not having feet on the ground in the plant out there searching in a needle in a haystack for stuff. I'd say that was the largest gain that I saw, Amanda.
That's great. And we've been talking a lot about efficiency and cost savings, but there are compliance applications as well, right? If you're using a tool that's out of calibration, that can have a huge product and quality and compliance impact. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And at the beginning of that project, it's kind of been this was part of that actually, is a lot of times where this particular customer did not actually have a manned tool crib. So operators were working 3 shifts coming into the calibration lab, or the calibration cage is actually what calibs were more referred to as, and they're taking out instruments as needed. And in the calibration lab, definitely there's tagging systems, there's what's awaiting calibration shelves and things like that. But a lot of times folks aren't going to pull the items out of their tool crib locations until it's time for calibration. So essentially someone on 3rd shift would come into the calibration lab, take a device out, and they would walk out onto the production floor with that item, and not really to blame them, but the calibration label says yes, it's past due or it's coming due, etc. But they would go ahead and take it on the production floor and not pay attention to the label. So then we get into a compliance situation where they're using a gauge that they simply should not be. So with the system that we implemented there, we actually had audible alerts that when a gauge that was coming due within 7 days or was past due, an audible alert went off at the tool crib, and at that door entry that said, hey, you're attempting to take out a piece of equipment that has, it's either coming due or is past due already, so maybe you should grab something different. So that was important at the very beginning of the project, but once that was in place, we start getting a door well kind of telling you, hey, you shouldn't take this device out of the calibration lab. it kind of gets rectified pretty quickly.
Awesome, great. So we will just wrap this up by saying that we hope you enjoyed this presentation on AIT-enabled tool tracking. Overall, we hope you've seen how improved tool management equals improved fulfillment and service overall, and the many examples of that. And one more point is, while this presentation was on AIT tool management, we've also found that the solution could really be extended and leveraged to track all types of assets. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
I will start to ask some of the questions. If you have a question, please send those through the chat option. So we can start now if you guys are ready.
Yes.
Okay, great. Can these software systems show, for example, if a medical tool was used and cleaned, how in-depth is the information or data that can be available in regards to the tools?
That's a great question. So as we mentioned, the data attributes and the business rules can be tailored to specific use cases like this medical tool example. Each touch point we can enable with AIT. The different barcodes or passive RFID, as mentioned before, and this will provide the visibility and granularity to your process. So that basically, in short, the data collected can be as in-depth as needed. Mitch, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, definitely. I think in the life sciences world, those are important elements, and a lot of times in the system that we have, I kind of showed you those workflows on that one slide earlier. So essentially, what you would have is the combination of the RFID tag coming into the Cal Lab or going into the room that's designated as cleaning. We can automate a lot of those things, but essentially they become like what we call an event transaction. So if we're going to document that we cleaned an item, we either want to have somehow your RFID push an event transaction to the database, or we want to have a manual opportunity to do that. So let's assume we have that data collected now. Well, then now we have this piece of equipment or tool downstream in the process, and let's assume that we're going to go back and issue it back out. Well, we can put smart, intelligent, logic-based rules in there that says, hey, this particular tool, it did not go through that dedicated process that the software allows you to set up. So parts of it we can automate. It just depends on how level of detail you want to get into it. Like, let's say when you're doing a cleaning of an instrument, you may have some dedicated fields that require them to be answered. Well, that has to happen on the software transaction side. But if it's just simply put that just moving it to a room called cleaning or a shelf called cleaning documents that process for you, then we could automate that with RFID transactions.
Yes, that's a good point. That's a good point, using the transition management tools that we covered.
Correct.
So actually, speaking of RFID, we had a question: is RFID the best technology to use for tool tracing?
In my opinion, yes, because it's eyes and ears. A properly set up active and passive system integrated with the software, it's going to give you, the software side is going to give you the ability to go track it, see it, query it, pull it up, query all that data. But an active and passive RFID system is eyes and ears without having eyes and ears, human body eyes and ears, So, and there's never situations, honestly, where people are doing things to violate a protocol on purpose. It's just people get busy. They have jobs in the plant and they have to go and get their lines back up and running, and they need a tool to do it. They grab it and they do it quickly. So sometimes it's simply documenting stuff doesn't happen because they want to get back to doing their day job. And we believe that active and passive RFID is most definitely the best way to handle that right now.
I would agree with that, but we did talk about using a combination, so you always have flexibility and redundancy, but overall, we're finding that passive or even active RFID is going to achieve all the requirements, the common requirements of tool management, like the location and tracking and so forth.
Great, thank you. Another question we received is typically how often does the software package have to be updated?
Mitch, you can start.
Yeah, I see that. It's cloud driven, so we handle that for customers. I mean, for certain scenarios, we do offer on-premise deployments where, due to regulation or compliance, that just may be required. But honestly, like our software versions, we have customers that are actively running software from 2008 of our products. Now, is that a good thing? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but it does go to speak about the quality of the products you're putting on your servers and installing on your systems. So typically, a typical customer that's not tied to like pharma and life sciences, where you get into validation efforts and FAA and FDA and those type of regulatory bodies, they're going to require you to validate your software, which means you can't really update it without going through a validation protocol. So we allow versions to be frozen for up to 5 years in that case. But just to get the software up and running and working, it's pretty robust. We're not going to force you to go and do upgrades. With that said, on our cloud platform, unless you're an FAA-driven or an FDA-driven organization, we're going to keep it up to date for you in real time. So as we release new versions, we update it for you.
Yes, and typically the software updates are made on a standard release schedule, on average something like annually as well. And you can also update on an ad hoc basis if you need to take advantage of new workflows and features, for example.
That's correct. And on the product lineup, any customer would have access to a portal that will be provided where a user can go in and see every little change that we're making. There's going to be a video explanation plus a text description of every little feature that was changed. So a lot of times there may be a version that we added a whole bunch of stuff in there just to close a deal with the next customer, and those things don't even apply to you. So you can certainly skip a version if needed. So yeah, but we do operate on a scheduled release cycle.
Okay, great. Another question we received is, does this work on a construction site? How would that work? Because would it need updated based on the job site that they are on, if they wanted to use it for real-time location system purposes?
This is a really good use case here. You can use this solution on a construction site, but you would be using it likely with GPS or geolocations or outdoor wireless networking. So based on your site capability, be using either GPS or outdoor wireless networking. And probably each site would need to be mapped using GPS coordinates and other zones within the software, and we would define the work area. The tools themselves would be associated with a larger parent asset like we talked about. That will help ensure the better readability based on the tag itself and based on this outdoor use case. There are some constraints with an open air environment. So things like the electrical requirements to power fixed RFID or RTLS devices have to be considered. However, you can have mobile devices in battery powered configurations as well. So all in all, you'd be using GPS or the outdoor wireless networking and then some of these battery powered technologies. But yes, you can make the solution work in a construction site.
Great, thank you. So another question we received is, if a mechanic, for example, grips the tool where the tag is, could they walk out without being detected?
Yes, they could. They can block where the tag is read. So there's nothing, there is some consideration there and some training there, but that's where if you have the history of the tool and not just relying on that one transaction, you can at least go back and have the audit trail of where the tool has been. And so there needs to be, in this case, business and management rules that still give that history before the user tries to block the tag.
Okay, thank you. Another question we received is, if you could give maybe a specific example of the tools that you typically work with.
Okay, so for like small, go ahead, Mitch.
Go ahead, Amanda. No, I was going to say, yeah, we've put them in on everything from, you know, hand tools the size of a caliper, a micrometer, all the way down to a lot of times you may have like a kit of different sized end mills or plugs where, you know, you may want to take those out so you can put a tag on the kit itself. I've also seen it go all the way to larger instruments like handheld multimeters and flow meters that are, you know, size of a school lunchbox sometimes or bigger. So really every size is certainly possible, but a lot of people always ask me, like, how small can you go? And, you know, you can epoxy, you know, a tag the size of a watch battery onto the side of a micrometer, and it works quite well, you know. So there's a huge opportunity there for multiple different sizes. Obviously on things like larger crates and stuff like that, you use a larger tag. But we have customers that are using it to track like crates, you know, 20, 30 things might be put in that crate, and then we call that a kit in the software, kit number A, and then you put a tag on there to identify kit A, and then the software just holds what's actually in kit A, you know. So it's a huge spectrum of the size of what you can put these tags on.
Agreed.
All right, great. We'll end with this question. I'll also put our speaker's contact information up on the screen now. And this last question is, can you give a little more detail about the integration between the Auto ID infrastructure and how that integrates into the IndySoft software from a data entry perspective?
Yeah, definitely. So on the IndySoft side, you know, that's kind of your database that's just receiving data from the transactions from the integrated IDS program, and it's done through REST calls. So essentially, there's a REST API that's going to sit between the systems. So their software and their hardware is capturing data transactions, things moving from one location to another. That's what's going to feed that data over to our program. So it's a REST API or REST calls is what pushes that data back and forth.
That covers it.
All right. Well, thank you, Amanda and Mitchell, for your time and your insights today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for everyone for joining.
All right, and thank you again to our audience for their active participation today. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their week.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.